Hi there, I'm Nathan Brown from Co-op Culture. This video is for participants on the Barefoot Co-op and Community Business Development Training Programme. And in this short video, we're going to look at market research. So first off, who cares about market research and why? If you're working with a group who are establishing a new cooperative enterprise or a community business, or indeed expanding an existing co-op, then market research will be an important component in the business plan. Who actually cares about market research? Who looks at this? Well, if the business is going to require money of some kind from somewhere, so for instance for working capital or to purchase fixed assets, then you're going to need to convince lenders or other investors, for instance members of the community investing in a community share offer, that what you're attempting to do is viable. And one of the key questions to ask when you're establishing or expanding a business about viability is there enough market demand there for us to sell enough that we demonstrated in the financial projections we need to sell in order to be profitable and to be viable. So, who cares about market research? Funders, investors, but also founders. The people who are setting up this cooperative entity may well need to check whether or not it's going to be viable themselves before they invest lots of time, potentially money into it. And if they're going to try and entice other people to join them in this venture because they're a small startup group and they realize they need a larger group of people to get the thing up and running, then demonstrating that this is viable and it's not a waste of time is one of the ways you can attract people. If you're asking somebody to give up the day job and join the team to start a new worker cooperative, then they need to know that this is going to be viable. So broadly, that's who cares about market research and why. What can market research tell us? At the most basic level, it can demonstrate the existence of a market and the extent of that market in the area you seek to serve. Now, obviously, if you're offering services over the internet, then the area you seek to serve is potentially global. But, let's work on the basis that we're talking about a geographical area. So in your city, town, village, wherever you're going to serve, how big is the market for the sorts of things that you're aiming to provide in terms of goods, services? So is your market local businesses? Is your market the general public? Is your market a niche section of the general market? For instance, people interested in organic foods, vegan foods, that sort of thing. So the basic market research can demonstrate the existence of a market in your area and how big it is. Basic market research can also demonstrate that there's a gap in the market. So there are people seeking something which they can't find at the moment. Sometimes when there appears to be a gap in the market because other providers aren't providing the service or goods that you aim to provide, it may not necessarily mean that there's a market in that gap. The reason that nobody's serving it is because they've tried and they failed because nobody's actually interested, nobody wants to buy it. So that's something else you can test out with the very basic level market research. When we get into more detailed market research, we can find out all kinds of things. So you can test demand for a specific product before you launch it or before you go into production. More detailed market research can actually help you understand the competition for the customers that you aim to serve. So, what does the competition look like? If we're going to carry out some competitor analysis, it should be based on quite detailed research, looking at very specific attributes. In undertaking that work to understand the competition, it can be useful to help us establish our unique selling point. What makes us different from the other offers out there, from the other things that people might spend their money on? Another aspect of market research is helping you to sort of reasonably estimate the likely market reach. So if the basic research has said that there's a potential market in your area of 20,000 people, who else is serving that market? How much is left untapped? If there are 5 providers in the area of those 20,000 people, is it safe to assume that you might be able to attract 1,000 customers? That sort of thing. And it will depend very much on the precise business you're creating and the nature of the customers. More detailed market research, when you start talking to individual people, you can start to establish the likely spend. So for instance, if you do a detailed survey, you can find out how much people are likely to buy from your business and on what frequency. So, if you're offering room hire, how often does that organization need to hire a room? And how much is it likely to spend? How much is it spending at the moment with your competition? So that gives you a good idea when it comes to estimating your likely sales. Detailed market research, when you start talking to potential customers, can also help you learn more about those markets. What sort of things are they interested in? Are there other things they're interested in other than what you're proposing to offer? So could you actually be identifying potential new products or services or goods that they might be interested in the future? It can also help you identify new target markets. As you start to explore, you might realize that the group you thought you were first going to be providing services to shares something in common with other markets. So the whole process of doing the research can actually help you improve the viability of your business by widening the market range. And detailed discussion with people from your target market can help you choose the right promotional strategies. So how much is enough? Well, how much market research is enough is a bit like asking the question, how long is a piece of string? It really depends on what you need to prove and who you need to prove it to. If the nature of your business is such that the model is proven and all you're doing is having to demonstrate that there's sufficient demand from it in your area and there's no competition, then you probably wouldn't need to carry out as much research as if you're going into a highly saturated market where your unique offer is offering something different, and you would then need to do more detailed research to demonstrate why and how the market would be more interested in what you're doing than what's already available. So it really is a case of how long is a piece of string. So case by case basis, you need to sort of be critical, assess, analyze, and work out what you need to do to convince yourselves or to convince backers like funders and investors that what you're attempting to do is viable and likely to succeed. So before choosing a form of research, a form of market research, it's good to sit down and establish what your research needs to demonstrate, which normally means asking yourself, who does it need to demonstrate that to? So if we're asking for money, how much are we asking for? What's a proportionate amount of research to demonstrate the demand? And in fact, if you are talking to an investor or a group of investors, ask them, what do you need to see for you to be convinced that this is viable? Rather than perhaps doing far more research than you need to, or alternatively not doing enough and then getting knocked back. Also, you need to think about your timescale. What timescale are you working to? If you're on a very short timescale, you've got a short window of opportunity. For instance, if you've got an asset of local value and you're in the moratorium period and you're having to put together a very quick business plan, how much time have you got to go out there and do the research? And the other issue you need to consider is how much money you've got to spend on the research, or more likely, how much time do you have to spend on the research? So who's in your team? What time have they got available to carry out research? And also not just the capacity, but the capability, because going out and carrying out research is something that not everyone is suited to doing. And there are, as we're about to see, there are different forms of research that some people may be more suited to than others in your team. So let's look at types of market research. This mind map demonstrates the sort of various, or some of the basic types of research that you can undertake when you do market research. So we have on the one hand, on the left hand side, we have primary research, and on the right hand side, secondary research. We'll deal with secondary research first. Broadly, what we're talking about here is desk research. You're not talking directly to the market. You're not talking to participants in the market, your future customers themselves. It's more looking at research that other people have already carried out. So we might be looking at newspaper reports which indicate the size and extent of a market or some sort of demand. Normally those will be based on published market research reports from the likes of Mintel. Sometimes you can actually access market research reports from libraries. Certainly the British Library in London, if you can get there, have in their business and IP centre, they have a whole host of market research reports published by the likes of Mintel. Cobweb is another provider of market research reports. You also get sector reports, which rather than being specific, are more broadly about the performance of the sector in particular. So if we were looking at establishing a community pub, it would be useful to go and look at the British Pubs Guide, on likely turnover, and the publication that the Plunkett Foundation produces every year, which looks at the performance of community pubs. Then there's demographic data. So it's possible to access publicly available data which demonstrates the size of a population in a particular area and also the makeup of that. So I've actually got a link here to, because I live in Southampton, the Southampton Data Observatory. So actually, the local authority and a local economic partnership and other interested organisations have come together to ensure that there is available insights into the area. So for instance, you can look at population, you can drill down and find out the population size and structure, look at how population is changing. I mean, if for instance you're interested in a particular age group, we can see here the size of the age group. So if your product or service is specifically targeting the age 20 to 24 category, you can see this is a boom part of the population in Southampton in 2020. So that's just an example of the sort of place where you can find data. There's all kinds of data available there. And as I say, sometimes there are observatories in areas which collate data from various sources, be that general census data, demographic data, data about the multiple deprivation within local council wards. All kinds of stuff can be found out there. So yeah, secondary research, go out, you don't have to speak to anybody, you can do it on the internet or in the library, very easy to do. So most fairly accomplished researchers can find the sort of secondary research. Might tell you the size of your likely market, might provide a more general idea about how many people are likely to buy what you're doing. If you've got a combination of, for instance, the percentage of the general population who are interested in a particular product based on market research reports, and you can extrapolate that based on the size of population in your area. May also be secondary research may be the place where you start when you're trying to do competitor analysis, or literally going through what used to be the yellow pages and similar, so local directories, even internet research into so if you're going to establish a window cleaning round, how many window cleaners are there in the area that you seek to serve? Some of this can be found out through desk research. And if you're able to find pricing information about your competitors through this online desk research, then that might help when it comes to making pricing decisions about where you're going to pitch yourself in the market. So that's secondary research. Desk research, don't have to speak to anybody, can do it from the safety of a computer screen. Primary research is less theoretical and much more tangible. So we're actually talking to real people. Okay, so this is research that we have carried out. Our co-op has carried out this research rather than looking at somebody else's research. And more often than not, you've got to be speaking to real live people. So if you're not good at speaking to people, you need to find somebody in your team who will be. Particularly useful when you're looking at specific products or specific services, because you can test out with individuals whether they'd be interested, and if they would, what attributes or characteristics they'd like from that service. Can be useful for testing out a location as well. So which part of town do your target market actually tend to go to if you've got a physical location. Again, can be useful with pricing decisions. You can test out with the market, we're thinking about charging £2 for this product. Would you buy it? Yes or no? Would you, or even what price would you pay for this product? So there are different ways of testing out pricing decisions. Even, what do you typically spend on a product like this? What's your maximum, what's your minimum? And how often would you buy that? And then teasing out the benefits of any product or service by actually having a conversation with your target customers can help when it comes to putting together your promotional and marketing strategies. So if we're looking at primary research, here are a few examples of approaches you can take. I mean, one is the interview. It's literally sitting down and talking to each individual. Obviously, this is very time consuming, but it gives you a much deeper level of detail, and you can follow up on questions as they arise. So if somebody says something of interest, you can go, oh, right, okay, not on my list of questions, but I'm going to talk to you about that because that's a really interesting point you've raised. One of the most popular ways is surveys. So it used to be somebody standing on a street corner or somebody at an event with a clipboard, stopping you on the street and asking your opinion. You can also provide sort of paper surveys that people are given and then asked to return. Now, normally, in order to get a decent return rate, you might want to consider running some sort of prize draw so that people are incentivized to actually fill it in and return it to you. And, stamped addressed envelope type thing. That was in the paper age. Now you're probably more likely to get a better response from an online form. So using something like MailChimp or Google Form to send out surveys to individuals whose details you've managed to attract. And then there's using social media as well. So you can embed some of these sort of questions either as a whole survey or as individual one-off questions, testing one at a time using social media. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you know, whatever platforms you're using. When it comes to sending out surveys, you're obviously going to need to decide which market you're targeting and then try and find some way of contacting them. So one of the tricks I've used in the past is if you have a particular niche within your target markets, what are the interest groups that those people are going to be attached to? You know, are they local societies or associations? You know, so I'll give the example of when I was working with a startup co-op who was setting up a completely vegan shop. We knew there were some existing campaign groups who focused on issues that they were interested in, so we targeted them. So environmental, animal rights, members of existing food buying groups who were predisposed to that. So, you know, if you're doing surveys, then have a think about how you can actually make sure that your surveys get to the group of people that you're most interested in. One of the other ways you can carry out primary research is with product testing. So with individual products, you can go along and you can organise a focus group at a community venue and get people in and say, right, you know, here's our product. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. And that can either be done as a group activity with, you know, with somebody who's experienced at facilitating a focus group, or even with individuals, but they come in at set times and you entice them in with a reward like £5, or, you know, here's a voucher for when we open. And they come in and you give them the product, and then you send them off with their survey, which they fill in and then give back to you. Another really useful form of primary research is test trading. So either from your own premises as you're setting them up, or local markets, if we're talking about physical products. You know, is there an event or a fair taking place, or a local street market at which you can pitch up and you can try selling what one of your core products. Now that's really useful from two respects. One is it helps you as a co-op start trading, start working out what it's like to actually deal with the public and whether you've got the skills within your team. It also gives you a taste for the reality of running your business. But you can speak to individual people when they buy your product. You can find out, you know, you think it's expensive, do you think it's too cheap? Even say to them, look, you know, later on when you're passing, please pop back and chat to us. So you can ask all these searching individual questions. So you can combine an interview with actually testing out whether or not people will buy it. And it can give you an idea of the likely take up. You know, if you sell 50 jars of your co-op jam at a farmer's market, what indication does that give you for likely sales on another occasion? Another form of primary research is to run a soft launch before you officially launch your business. Find key people who will be able to give you feedback on your business, provide them with the service. So, you know, whether it's goods or services, give them the experience of being a customer, but for free or subsidized, and then ask them for feedback. And the great thing about a soft launch as well is not only is it an opportunity for feedback, but it's also a promotional opportunity, because if people really love what you did, then they're going to go out of their way to tell other people about how great it was. And then the final form of primary research I'm going to talk about is observation. If you're considering setting up a business in a physical location, spend some time there. Look at the sort of people who are there. Look at the other businesses. Who walks through here? When do they walk through here? Is it completely dead until 11 o'clock in the morning? Is it busy in the evening? Is it quiet? Do people park and walk, or do they walk from the local area? So observation can be really useful when it comes to sort of sussing out the lie of the land where you're intending to set up. So that was just a bit of an overview about some of the forms of market research you can undertake to help inform the business planning and the viability for a cooperative business. And as an advisor, you can work with your client group to help them select something which is appropriate.